those who have bought Volkswagen cars in the past, and used them thinking that they were actually helping the environment. I'll take your question later if I have time. Thank you. And conversely, hurting the environment because these cars did not actually fit the safety standard or the environmental standard. Yeah. Moving on to our second point of honesty. So, Volkswagen got away with shady testing for more than 7 years. Yeah, according to Associatedpress.org. And in this way, they used to be the world's top-selling car maker. However, as a result of the scandal, their stock dropped by 27%. They already have seen a huge detriment to their company, which is in this way, people because they're the world's top-selling car maker, their economy, and because they lost the trust of the public, people will stop buying cars from Volkswagen, thus hurting Volkswagen's public image. Not only hurting Volkswagen's public image, but also hurting their public image as well as their company, because when less people are buying their cars, they're not getting enough profits. Therefore, they have less jobs. They have to lay off more people, and they have to raise the prices of their cars. Less jobs for the many workers who are working for the world's top-selling car maker, which leads to more people who don't have jobs, which means more people are. I forgot more information. I'll take your question later if I have time. Volkswagen will make its image better if they pay reparations, because at least people will know that they're trying their best to make amends for the wrong that they have done. The Volkswagen CEO stated that he was deeply sorry for breaking the public's trust, and he would do everything necessary in order to reverse the damage this has caused. And while money can't solve everything, it's definitely a start, and the reparations brought by Volkswagen would most likely do more good for the future of our country. Otherwise, everyone will be in poverty. That's not good.
How long was that, girl?
5 minutes and 30 seconds.
I want to leave.
Okay.
I usually don't debate like this.
Yeah, this is under great stress and distress.
I'm not
Today,
stressed. I'm
usually
just
bad.
upset.
That's what she's saying.
Okay, upset.
I'm gonna go on case, off case, half neg.
Where are you going?
Wait, stay here.
Wait.
At least do another speech so Mei-Mei can talk.
Okay, I'll do another speech.
Thanks.
I'll just put away my flow.
Appreciate
Oh,
it.
how are you gonna-
It's like that no paper round at the indie tournament.
Okay.
Come on. Okay. I'm not gonna time myself, so this is gonna be really short.
Okay.
I'll time you.
Okay, thanks.
As the leader of the negation team, I strongly believe in today's resolution that Volkswagen ought to pay reparations for its attempts to thwart emissions rules. Okay. I'm going to go over framework, then move on to address their case. Okay, so essentially what they're saying is that right now they're going to say that they're going to pay money. They haven't really specified to whom exactly they're paying money, and they kept saying that, oh, we're going to bring it up in the next speech. The next affirmative speech, but how does that help the next speaker? The next speaker needs this information to properly refute their case. Okay. And this whole plan about how they're going to take money that they were going to use to develop 300 cars, I'm going to get into that later, but that's a bad idea. Thanks. It's going to have bad impacts. I'm going to get to that. Okay. Moving on to address first contention. Actually, we can get into it right now. All right. Which is an environment. 1, it's non-unique. 2, if you don't buy that, blink turn. Give me 1 second. I gotta find my blocks. Okay. So, already, I'm going to get into this later in the negation team's case, but the thing is, if Volkswagen is forced to pay reparations beyond what they've already set aside, they're not going to have money anymore to develop more fuel-efficient cars. And so that just turns their case, because then the environment can't improve, because Volkswagen is still going to make the same cars that produce the same amount of emissions, and that means that they can't really reduce emissions. Okay. Yeah, so they don't have access to whatever impacts they may have said. It's contention. Second contention about honesty. All right, this point really didn't make any sense. It didn't, there was no link. The link story was just kind of like, the link story started talking about economy, and that's inherently their link story is essentially our link story for our contention. Yeah, we agree with this loss of jobs and cycle of poverty that they mentioned. I don't see how paying money to how essentially paying money is going to fix this whole honesty issue. Yeah. Okay. First contention, economy. All right, so for Volkswagen has already been forced to stop the sale of all cars equipped with. Okay, has already been forced to stop the sale of all these cars and like recall these cars, right? So they've already set aside $7.3 billion, and of the fact that they have to stop selling these cars actually make up 20 to 25% of all of Volkswagen's volume. That is a significant portion of the cars that they make. They're losing this whole portion of cars that they can sell, and thus they're losing all the profit that they could have gained from these cars. All right, so it would be disastrous if Volkswagen had to pay even more money on top of that. So that would mean that dealerships close and people would lose their jobs. Now, people who work, so car dealerships, they're not unionized, which means that those employees have very little protection, which means that Volkswagen can lay them all off and they're all going to lose their jobs, which means that they can extend that their quality of life goes down. The cycle of poverty can continue because they just cannot afford to support their children, and their children must drop out of school and go and get jobs at earlier ages without having the higher level of education required to get higher paying, better jobs. All right. So in addition, the affirmative team mentioned that Volkswagen stock markets dropped. Yes, they did drop. Okay. So that means that 1/3 of Volkswagen's value has been wiped out. That's a major loss for the individual shareholders as well as the other corporations. Yeah. Essentially impacts poverty, higher rates of poverty. We see more income inequality because we're going to be losing essential middle class jobs. We'll see the income gap widening. We're eliminating middle class, essentially. Yeah, poverty, there aren't really any developments. Vote neg.
Good one. Oh my god. 452. Okay, these are like the worst. This is the worst debate we've ever done.
Yeah, this is
Okay. Is everybody ready?
Okay.
Oh, can someone talk about my freshman year?
No, we don't talk about such times. All of,
Like the second speaker of the emergency.
Get over here!
I strongly affirm today's resolution with a passionate heart that Volkswagen ought to pay reparations for its attempts to thwart emissions rules. So, because the first speaker was incompetent and didn't bring this up in her speech, I'll be going over it in my own speech. So, the affirmative team is not advocating that Volkswagen should continue making cars. Because like we stated in our second contention, the public image of Volkswagen would obviously be
Volkswagen should continue making cars.
Yeah. That the public, they already lost public trust, and if they say that if they're gonna put in money to make cars with that fit the rules across the world for clean fuel emissions, then people would still be less likely to buy from their cars, which still means a loss of profit for Volkswagen. Therefore, we're stating that Volkswagen shouldn't continue making cars because they lost the public's trust, and there's no way they can bring their trust back up because there's always going to be someone who's going to bring them down.
Okay.
That being said, Volkswagen is a terrible company, and we should not, the affirmative action is not advocating for them. That being said, we need to make sure that Volkswagen pays for the wrongs that they have done by paying reparations towards all the people. Sit down. By paying reparations to all the people that they have, that paying reparations to car owners that have, people who have bought Volkswagen cars in the past 2 years. I'm changing it because I'm the second speaker. I don't accept.
What point are you on?
I'll take it later.
Which contention?
I don't have any contention.
So hard to flow.
Okay. As a brief roadmap, I'll be refuting the negation case. Then moving on to my own strong, unrivaled case. Okay. So they talked about how Volkswagen had no money to develop cars because all the money would be going towards people, towards the people who bought these cars in the first place. And we never said, like I just stated, we never said Volkswagen should continue making more fuel-efficient cars. I'll be going over the impact of this in my well-developed case. Thank you. They refuted our environment contention by saying it was not unique. In fact, I don't know, man.
What point are you on? She's on my first point.
I'm on your first point.
Oh, unique. Wait, are you
The first next speaker stated that Volkswagen had no money to develop cars. This was under your first point.
It wasn't your first point.
No, yeah, it was
your first.
under my first point. It was anyway.
I'm sorry, novices.
Our second. Are you apologizing for my behavior? We shouldn't have had this debate in the first place.
No, just finish.
Wait, what oh God, no! I swear to God.
Okay. Our second contention. They stated our second contention of honesty was that it did not matter because they just stated it didn't matter and it didn't flow after that. Then they moved on to their own case. I'll be repeating their case now. So their first contention was of the economy and how Volkswagen was forced to stop the sale of all cars, which means people would lose their jobs because they lose profit. We'd like to argue that they're going to lose profit anyway because they did a disgusting, horrible thing by lying, and lying is not morally correct. So they deserve this. Or the people who are in charge deserve this. Unfortunately for them, this means that the people under them would have to suffer as a consequence, which means, like they stated, I'm gonna do it next week. The lower class, it would eliminate the lower class. That's a bad thing. Vote neg. Can I run it?
If you run a T-shell in your last speech, I would literally run a counter T.
How do you run it? How do you
My
run
point
a
of
T?
order. No.
No, I was asking.
You can't run a critique now.
I mean, I've already done so much. Might as well.
The worst bit is a very good question. No one does. Kind of confused well.
Okay.
Today apparently wasn't a very good day. Okay.
Yeah, Lily, now you know.
Okay, also, like, having a coach makes it more high pressure because, like, we have to actually debate, and then it's like,
You guys are doing fine.
It's fine.
We'll go over this.
I'm just gonna stand here. okay.
I'm sorry, Coach.
It's fine. Oh, can I do impact calculus? I don't know any of this stuff.
It's okay,
Maybe
Mei-Mei.
over dramatic.
Okay.
So does this mean you're waiving the PMR?
Huh?
Does this mean you're not giving the rebuttal?
I can't
Can I
give the rebuttal.
take that 5 minutes?
I can't give. No. I can't give the rebuttal speech.
And you'll just
The
give
thing
2
is,
rebuttals?
The question is, are you guys ready for my rebuttal speech?
It's really not.
Oh,
It's
I'm
really-
sorry. You're
This
oh.
is not.
Wow, I'm supposed to be an exemplary
Yeah.
varsity student.
Yeah.
What a joke.
This is not the usual. This is them like hyper distressed and upset debating.
No, this is just not them.
So
By them, they mean.
by them I mean you and Mei-Mei.
Maybe it's doing fine.
I haven't even spoken yet.
Maybe doing fine.
Okay, fine.
Ready?
Fine. Yes. As a member of the affirmative team, I again strongly, are we in I again strongly negate today's resolution that Volkswagen ought to pay reparations for its attempts to thwart emission rules. As a brief roadmap for this speech, I'll first be going over the affirmative case, then moving on to the negation case. Now, just to sort of start off this speech, I'd like to make a statement that the last speaker's speech essentially consisted of the statement that AF is not advocating that Volkswagen continue manufacturing cars or developing cars. Okay, so now I'm going to move on through the rest of our case and explain why this statement, which is essentially the core of their case apparently, actually affirms, or actually, what? Sorry, their passionate case actually actually argues on the side of negation. So their first contention was about the environment. My partner entirely refuted it, explained why it's not unique, because as she stated, if Volkswagen is not having the money to continue making cars, then they won't have the money to continue developing more innovations to actually help the environment. So they're actually harming the environment by forcing Volkswagen to pay more money. Now, as the affirmative team confirmed, yes, we are not going to be developing any new cars. This only further affirms the negation team's case. They are essentially arguing for the loss of the development. They are arguing for they are arguing for worsening the environment because they are arguing that that Volkswagen shouldn't make any more cars. And they also talked about how paying money or how having money to develop newer and better cars doesn't actually matter because they've already lost the public's trust. Again, that is sort of non-unique and argues for our side because, I don't know what I'm saying. Okay, moving on to their second contention, which my partner again fully refuted. Negation or affirmative didn't really address that at all, so our refutation stands. You can flow that across. Okay, moving on to talk about the negation team's case, which was about economy, about how the Volkswagen has already had to recall so many cars, has already promised to pay so much money, and how not only will they be harming their own business by not being able to develop any more cars, that also harms the economy. They're also harming all the millions of people across America who will lose their jobs, the dealerships that will have to close, all the lowered consumer spending because people won't be buying cars anymore, because like the affirmative team said, they are not advocating for Volkswagen to continue making cars. They are not advocating for Volkswagen to try to improve the economy by actually selling better cars. They're not advocating for Volkswagen to improve the environment by selling better cars. So, for these reasons, I strongly affirm and negate today's resolution. Vote. This is so good.
3:45.
Mei-Mei,
one
that was
voter.
great. I have tears in my eyes. Not from the stress of anything, but because of your speech.
Thanks.
Okay. I have one voter. Great. Well, what else am I supposed to write a voter issue about? Repeat again, environment. You mean like, not like, we just mitigate the environment. Very sad. Okay. As the leader of the negation team, I once again strongly negate that Volkswagen ought to pay reparations for its attempt to thwart the emissions rules. Okay, this speech I'm going to go over voters or issues why the negation team has clearly won today's debate. Okay, let's talk about impacts. So the affirmative team today, when they've told you their points, they've essentially just told you, like, they haven't given you any impacts at all. They have not related to the criterion of net benefits at all. They've just given you some vague rhetoric about the environment and honesty, which the honesty point didn't make much sense. Yeah, they didn't have a link for that. It's not like they would have linked it. Okay. Yeah, essentially the affirmative team has no impacts. They have no relation to the criterion at all. Meanwhile, if you look at the negation team's case, we have several impacts that we've mentioned throughout our speeches. We've mentioned the loss of jobs, we've mentioned lower consumer spending, we've mentioned cycle of poverty. And so all in all, these impacts will all contribute to the downward spiral of the economy. And so we've clearly explained how we link into this, and obviously this relates to the criterion of net benefits. Really? I think I'm done with my speech. Okay.
That's time is quite the debate.
Is everybody ready?
1:15.
Come over here, Pearl. Stop wasting our time.
Then I just won't talk.
She can spend the 4 minutes you could have been giving that last speech getting ready to walk up there. Make up your speech. It's good practice.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Is everybody ready?
Yeah. There's a lot of reviews.
No, my voters.
Your voters.
As the final speaker of the affirmative team, I strongly affirm today's given resolution that Volkswagen ought to pay reparations for its attempts to thwart emissions rules. So, I'd like to begin by, I'll be going over voter issues today, which are reasons why the affirmative team, conversely, has actually won this debate. So, our first voter issue is that of the negation team's solvency, because that was a terrible point to run. Okay. Okay. I take that back, because that can be easier.
You're the last
There
speaker.
are no
Let's go.
last
They can't repeat you anymore.
Well, that's true. I don't know.
It's okay.
Well, okay. The affirmative team. Okay, I'd like to clarify our honesty point. How's that? Okay, our first voter issue today is of our honesty point. So the negation team never clearly responded to our honesty point because they stated it was unclear. It was. However, because they didn't refute it at all, they basically conceded to our honesty point, which our honesty point, which was that if Volkswagen doesn't have the public trust anymore because because people aren't going to buy their cars, then it doesn't matter if they're going to give jobs to people by continuing to make more fuel efficient cars. Because the thing is, people will stop buying Volkswagen cars because of this incident. And thus, even if they do make cars that do follow the standard, people won't vote for or people won't buy them because they're afraid that they're going to be hurting the environment. They're afraid that they're going to be cheated and lied to again, like Volkswagen has been doing for the past 7 years. So, our honesty point is basically stating that reparations are extremely necessary because they're the only way that they're the best option Volkswagen has as of now to properly properly make up for what they've done wrong. Because like I stated in my first speech, Volkswagen has done something terrible. They've lied to the public, and and thus they deserve what's coming to them. However, which means that they should pay reparations to those. I don't even know who they're paying reparations to.
That's what I said.
I guess they could. What if they paid reparations? What if they paid reparations to their workers?
Reparations to the EPA.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
it's too late. I know. It doesn't matter anymore. Sorry I wasted your time, guys.
It's okay, bro.
You made me go up and think.
This is Mei-Mei. We're totally wasting this resource we have. This coach.
Sorry, coach.
She'll give you some feedback. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I actually thought the first speech was okay. The PMC, other than the lack of a specific plan, which I think we found out had problems for later on in the debate, the rest of the speech was fine, right? So the first advantage is okay, right? Like, clearly if Volkswagen is not making fuel-efficient cars, they're not saving for the environment. So that's fine. The other argument that you have for the honesty, I think, is an interesting argument. I think another way that you could have done it is maybe instead of call it honesty, maybe call it something like accountability, right? So if Volkswagen has been getting away with not meeting these standards, and other companies can get away with it too. So we want to try and make Volkswagen be an example so that other people don't try and find ways around the standards, right? And I think that would probably have been a better impact or better link scenario to get to environmental stuff, because then other companies won't be trying to save for the environment. And I think that might be a better link scenario as well. So the only issue I have with the affirmative is I think your second speech contradicted the first speech a little bit,